I don't think he has much choice in that. Okay, Madam Chair, members of the CEC, members of Parliament, distinguished guests. It's really good to be here for probably the third time in a year talking about something that's really important to all of us, and that's making sure that women are provided with the opportunities to take an equal role in electoral and political processes. Our focus in research has been on electoral management. Our colleagues at NDI work more on political participation, and they both go together. Why is it beneficial? What's the point of having more women in electoral management? When you look at research over the last 15 years in both the corporate and public sectors, there's a very clear conclusion from statistical evidence on gender balance in management. And it shows that this is important to make decisions better, it makes team performance better, and it gives more trust in organisations. Very, very clear from the business sector, from the public sector, from the CSO sector. The research that's been done on diversity in management teams from the early 2000s. And these things are all critical in managing a good election. So gender balance in election staff means a better managed election. And who does not want that? It also, as some evidence shows, will help voter turnout, as referred to by Randall before. Women, particularly in polling station positions, allow more comfort, encourage other women to come out to vote. Where does Kosovo rank in terms of this? Well, unfortunately not too well when we compare it to other countries in the region and the general area of Eastern Europe. There have been improvements, as Madam Ducker enunciated before, but when we look at women members of election commissions at the central level, 9% in Kosovo, the lowest in the region. When we look at women members of municipal level election commissions, 13% in Kosovo. Again, the lowest in the general region, where others have well over 35%, some over 50%. When we look at women members of polling station commissions, we're at about 22% here, compared to over 70% in a number of countries. And again, we're the last or second last in this general region of the Balkans and Eastern Europe. So while things are improving, there's a lot of work to be done. And we wanted to find out what were the reasons for this. Why is it so much lower in Kosovo? And it's not because of the way that election staff are selected. Most of these countries that this comparison is done with also have their polling station staff, their municipal level election commission staff nominated by political parties, or largely nominated by political parties. So we can't blame the method of itself. When we did this research, we talked to people who've been polling staff, who hadn't been polling staff, women, men, people from political parties, people from civil society organisations. And we'll present the results of this later in detail. But there's no real rocket science about some of the answers we got. Basically, the major barrier to women is what could only be described as really a 19th century attitude to their place in society. And the sorts of reasons that were coming up that were barriers to women participating in election management, the sorts of reasons you may have found 60 years ago in the West, but are gradually disappearing. Things like women are too easily influenced, or maybe they're not too easily influenced. Women are not capable, either mentally or physically, of doing a job as a polling official. Women are expected to be with their families rather than be out working a long day in a polling station. And commonly, these were the reasons that were coming up in the focus group discussions and in the discussions with people who've been and have not been polling staff. There are others, some to do with safety and some to do with security, some to do with access, and these are things that could happen to either men or women polling staff. So what do we need to change this? Firstly, there has to be a commitment on the part of political parties, as the people or the organisations that nominate election staff, to do better than they've been able to do in the past. And a big step has been taken with this, with the signing by 17 parties of the Declaration on Women's Inclusion in Electoral Management. But this has to be backed up by deeds, not just words. Signature looks great on a piece of paper, but unless there's some action taken on those commitments made by these 17 parties, things are not going to get any better than they are now. So that action is needed. Secondly, there is a law of gender equality in Kosovo. Unfortunately, there aren't really the mechanisms to enforce its provisions or make sure that these minimum numbers of women are actually in management positions or in staff positions in general. Political parties readily now accept that 30% of their candidates should be women, 30% of their representatives should be women. There is no reason why they can't also accept that at least that percentage of their staff and of their administrative structures should also be women. No reason why they wouldn't be able to comply with that just as easily as they have with representatives. And this is an approach that's been taken in some other countries. In the Balkans, both Albania and Macedonia have gender quotas for election staff. We managed to raise the numbers of women who are working on elections through use of these quotas. As we've seen in Kosovo, with gender quotas for representatives, the need gradually will fall away. We're having more and more women elected of their own right to Parliament. A quota for staff would also assist perhaps in getting the initial start there, and then it'll be less and less needed election after election. In other countries, where I've worked in the past in East Timor was another example, it was voluntary. From about 20% of election staff being women in the early 2000s, there were 50% in 2012. And that was an attitude change. Parties recognising that they could attract more voters if they had women in polling stations, women in their administrative structures. But that took 10 years to reach that point. It may not necessarily be a quick fix. One other way that other countries have used is that the Election Commission is solely responsible for selecting and appointing all election staff. Perhaps not at the political stage for that now, but is regarded as the best practice in election management. So there are the opportunities. It does have benefits. What we need to see is an attitude on the part of all those responsible for election staffing that promotes women into these positions. Thank you.